So hello, my friend. Kartikeya, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on the AdvaTech podcast. Before we kind of get going here, why don't you tell everyone that would be listening a little bit about yourself, maybe about your background, and maybe give us a little bit of an introduction to your business, Cambridge Learning Services.
Sure. So I am Kartikeya. I am currently the director slash CEO of Cambridge Learning Services. It's a K to 12 tutoring company. My sister actually started this like 6 years ago or something like that. We started tutoring kids in our living room, and the belief back then and still is now that we want to reduce the barriers to education for all kids in our community. And it still lives with us to this day. And so after I graduated university in 2023, ever since then I've been, taking over operations. And now with, the rise in AI and a lot of different developments, I want to integrate or, move into EdTech and expand my tutoring business because I see that, in today's age and, all the stuff that's happening, specifically on like school funding and whatnot, there is a big need for tutoring services and education services. And EdTech specifically is a booming industry that's very competitive right now. But
Great. So with Cambridge Learning Services, what do you think is like the major problem that you guys are solving? Like, why are you guys having so much success with your tutoring service?
If I had to break it down, like students face a ton of different problems, but if I had to break it down to the most important and broadly applicable issue, it's that it comes from the home. So many students that I find that I come into our centers don't have a good home environment to learn. And that comes from the parents not understanding the curriculum, the parents not understanding how well their child is actually performing in school. Like sure, maybe they got a proficient and a satisfactory in English, but can they read a book out loud properly? Can they spell basic grade four words? Can they write neatly? A lot of small stuff that maybe they aren't well versed in and they just don't know when it comes to grade 10 shows up and they get put in 10-2, 10-3, like the lower course loads, course streams, sorry. And the parents just don't find out until too late. And the kids don't know, of course, they don't know what's the difference between good studying and bad studying. And the service that I provide, and I believe that all parents need to do is just making sure your child is has an environment to sit down and do their homework or sit down and learn and read a book, distraction free. And the way that we set it up is like it's a 2 hour tutoring session where again there's no distractions and they're there's tutors available for immediate feedback. They're pushed to have this discipline. You can't tell a 12-year-old like, oh, you should be studying all the time. You need to have discipline because it's important. You need to actually show them and force them to do it, and then it becomes a habit. So if I had to do one biggest issue, I would say it's the home environment. Parents just don't know, aren't, on top of it. And the students, of course, it's hard to, say that the 10-year-old should be responsible for their own studying.
So would you say at Cambridge Learning Services, like as compared to some competitors, like I'm thinking of like Kumon and stuff like that, you're not just tutoring them on the topics, but you're also maybe tutoring them on best practices for like studying and et cetera. Do you think that's what's setting you guys apart?
I would say so. Like in terms of, yeah, best practices, mentorship, showing them, like making them motivated for their own academic success and success in general. And on top of that, of course, quality service, proper worksheets, textbooks, and whatnot. But a big part is like we know each student. Like I know every single one of my students, I know every single one of my parents, and I think that personal aspect is one of the things that differentiates us. And yeah, again, as you said, like instilling good habits and good behaviors and making them motivated to learn on their own and for themselves.
Why do you think maybe like why aren't schools able to do this? Are they maybe underfunded or they not don't have the appropriate assets or time to be able to allocate to students on those things?
I think so. In Alberta specifically, from 2012 to 2022, the per student spending decreased by 17%, adjusted for inflation. And it's the lowest out of any province in Canada. And what that means is there's less dollars per student in any given school. And what that actually translates into is a really high teacher to student ratio.
Right.
So now one teacher is now, maybe 10 years ago is 1 to 20. Now it's 1 to 35, for example. Teachers are being spread thin. They're having to do more work and each individual student is getting less attention. And when you think about like any given classroom where there's students with learning disabilities in the same classroom, like these students would require maybe a little bit more attention, but this leaves the other students who maybe aren't picking up on the learning style that the teacher is presenting and whatever it is. And so I strongly believe like, yeah, it's funding is a huge thing and we see it everywhere. Um, More on that is another stat is Canada is the only G7 country with declining academic performance in math, science, and English. In I think this was 2022 or 2023. But the only G7, it's still really like our education system is quite good objectively to compare to other countries, but it's the only G7 country to have declining academic performance.
That's actually a bit staggering. That,
Mhm.
that caught me off guard there. That's crazy. I know from my perspective of now being a retired professor, um, it with all the different types of students in the class I feel today, much more multicultural classes, so maybe there's more language barriers, also a lot more just students that maybe need to learn in different styles now. It's very difficult to, let's say, provide a holistic approach to every student individually. Especially when I was working at Ryerson, we'd have classes of 1,200 students. So like it's very hard to it's impossible actually to serve them all justly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think the personalization aspect is a big differentiating factor for all tutoring centers, not just us, but like that the need for supplementary education, so tutoring services, I think will exist for a long time, just because, the lack of funding in these public schools. And, there's even um, surveys done from CBE, so Calgary Board of Education to teachers that say that they're stretched thin, they're more exhausted than they've ever been. They have to mark more, they have to grade more, they have to create more content, and less time is spent face to face with any given student.
I agree. I think maybe I'm a bit biased here as well, though, but I feel like the position of teacher, it's like less respected now today than it was maybe in the past. And I think that plays a contributing factor to maybe the how teachers and professors feel in those moments of trying to serve the student. And it's a hard battle for them at times, I think, as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think the need for face-to-face learning is such an ingrained thing in humans in general. I don't think face-to-face teaching and learning will change for a very long time. I think that AI and like EdTech and just technology in general will supplement that and enhance that. But I think the act of a teacher teaching a student will not change for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, that's my opinion at least.
I hope that's true. I really hope that AI doesn't replace the teachers. I think that human to human point of contact is like so desperately important. Especially
Mhm.
for kids who I think at times in school can feel very alone, if especially if they're struggling. Do you find that with maybe some of the kids that come to Cambridge Learning Services after you've worked with them a bit, they have a greater appetite for learning and they're more excited to go to school?
One of the most rewarding things that I find at my tutoring center is like over the years, I see students who've been with us, for like 1, 2, 3 years, and I see them we see them improve academic performance, but I see their attitude towards school changes. They're motivated to learn. They want to get more homework. They want to do better because once you start doing good at something, you want to do better at that thing. Like the only reason, and I say this to all my students, the only reason why people like doing math is because they're good at math. Nobody likes doing math and they're terrible at math, right? And to get good, you practice. You practice more than the next person. Um, and yeah, I kind of went on a tangent there,
No,
but
no, I agree. I told so let me bring it back to Cambridge Learning Services here. I was going through your pitch deck, which it's a very good pitch deck, by the way. And you have some you're hoping to or have plans of in 2026 to maybe expand to maybe a second or third location. Um, First question, how have you guys done so well like in your local community? It seems like you guys have a very strong like community of students and parents coming to you. So how have you kind of fostered that culture? And number two, how like what do you think the role of community plays in Cambridge Learning Services and how you guys have kind of been able to navigate the difficulties of the past few years of just owning a business in Canada?
that's a good question. So first point about community and just being able to do well in the last few years. Um, our reputation comes from the results that we deliver. I want to believe it's the results that we deliver and the personalization aspect of it. Like me, my mom, and my sister. Like it's a family-run business, right? My sister started it. She ran it for the first few years. My mom was doing it for a bit, and then now me and my mom share a lot of the um, like operational capacity. But a big part of that is like each one of us knows every single student and every single parent really well, well enough that we understand their weaknesses, understand like how they need to study. And secondary to that is like our service is a quality service. It's designed by, like my mom has 20 years of teaching experience. My sister and I each have like 8 to 10 years of tutoring experience prior to this. And we know how students learn. We have the content for it. We hire exceptional tutors and we're always there. So we see what's happening. We're able to get immediate feedback and touch points with all these students. Um, and just, iterating on that over the, last 6, 7 years is what's garnered us, this much success and the reputation that we've developed. And in terms of community engagement, and I guess it kind of relates to having a proper reputation, is that our pricing model, like we are cost leaders. If you compare our prices to almost any other tutoring company in the area or in the city or even the province, like we are cost leaders.
Right.
And the service that you get at the price that you pay is, I believe, unbeatable. Like we give out worksheets, we give out quality worksheets, we give out specific, we have learning plans that are customized to each student. We understand the needs of different students, even special needs, whatever it is, online, in person. Um, and yeah, I hope that.
It was a long question, so good for you to get through all of it. Well, before we were talking a bit about AI, so I definitely want to hear your insights on AI and education and how you think it's affecting it today and affecting and how it's going to affect, let's say, tutoring in the future. But before I ask you that question, you're talking about hiring tutors and stuff. What do you look for when hiring a tutor? Let's say from a personality perspective, or how does someone's if they come to you and they want a tutor at your facility, how can they stand out?
That's a great question. Um, I think what makes someone stand out, like the way that I interview is I actually put them in a class. Like I put them with students and I see like how do they interact with students. And of course, the skill of teaching and the act of teaching can be taught to someone else, but to just hear how they explain different concepts that might be completely foreign to other students is a really important factor.
Is
I
there
would
a lot of is there a lot of training with bringing in a new tutor, like in the Cambridge Learning Services like way of educating?
Hmm. Typically no. Like is the training is the tutoring model and the schedule that we run. Like the first hour will be this, then there's a break, and then you do this. So that is the training part of it. The act of teaching, that's something that we expect, and usually, yeah, we expect the tutor to have already. Usually we find like these tutors tell us like, oh yeah, I used to tutor my friends in high school. I used to tutor my friends in university. And just having the ability to explain a concept in different formats probably the biggest differentiating factor. Um, yeah.
Okay, so now I want to jump into AI now because I know that you probably have a lot to say about it. So I'll ask you the structured question here. With the rise of AI and personalized learning,
Mhm.
how do you see technology shaping the future of K through 12 education?
So AI already is shaping K to 12 education, like the amount of tools that are available, like Khan Academy has their own, BJYU has their own, and AI already is shaping education. Specifically for K to 12, I spoke to a teacher who teaches grade 11 social, something like that. And he told me that Alberta Education, or maybe specifically CBE, they have stipulated that you cannot grade any assignment or any homework that goes home with the student because of AI. Like if it goes home, doesn't count towards their mark. And I think that like concept or that stipulation is exactly what all schools should do. Like if you take it home, it's with AI nowadays, nobody can differentiate. I can't differentiate an AI written essay from the human written essay. But in terms of how it will evolve, I think that AI is a extremely powerful tool that students need to learn how to use. Preventing them and pushing them not to use it and not teaching them how to use it is, a disadvantageous. I don't think that's giving the best advantage to these students going into university and going into these jobs where if you know AI, like it's a huge plus on your resume. right now and in the next 5 years, even more so. And AI also affecting like the tools that teachers use, the tools that students use. That will be a huge factor that even I'm trying to make a dent in. But yeah,
It makes me think about, and I'm probably, probably a bit ahead of my age as compared to you, but I remember when I was a kid in school, the teachers would say, well, you're not always going to have a calculator in your pocket, you know? So I
yeah,
feel like it will be the same with AI. Yeah, I think we probably need to learn how to integrate it with learning in a better way, because people will always have access to it, sort of thing. It makes me also think too that in school, I think they'll put even more emphasis on like tests and stuff, so not maybe so much assignments and like you said, they can't take things home and work on them. We'll probably see even more inclination to do testing right in the class.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
100%. Even
Okay.
like Alberta Education, they canceled PATs last year. They canceled the grade 9 and grade 6 math and LA or something like that. I personally disagree with that. I think standardized tests are so useful in just measuring, assessing how well a student is doing, and this separates them from the AI, the tools that they might be using at home for their assignments and for their projects and whatever it is.
Do you think AI will have the biggest impact on tutoring over the next 5 years, or how do you see, like, how do you see tutoring evolving in the next 5 years?
I believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, tutoring will change because of technology. And I believe that the big, the Kumons, the Sylvan Learnings are going to be slow to adapt these technologies. And I personally want to be ahead of that curve and utilize AI in the early stages because we are still in the early stages. I just think that these big brick and mortar tutoring centers are going to be slow to change and slow to adapt. Like on one hand, in-person learning will be in demand for the next little bit. On the other hand, if you don't adapt to the technologies available in today's day and time, like, are you really a competitive business? Are you really a competitive learning model? I don't know. And
Yeah,
I want to believe that if I'm able to adapt and integrate AI and technology into my, like EdTech applications and also in my physical tutoring center, it'll set me apart and it'll differentiate my business from the next.
I think you're 100% right. So, for parents and kids who, let's say, aren't in Calgary and they can't make it to Cambridge Learning Services, what advice would you give them for finding a tutoring service? Like, how would you tell them to approach a tutoring service from the perspective that they'll get the most out of it?
Mhm. There's a few things there. So first, like I would always visit the center first. One, see like are there other students there? Are these students there like enjoying themselves? Like look at them, do they seem like they're having a good time? When I was in grade 7, I got sent to Kumon. I
Right.
hated it, because it was just learning these booklets on booklets on booklets, and I didn't really enjoy my time there. And I went to another tutoring center where I did have a good time. And so like you have to see are the other students having fun? Number one. Number two, do the owners know what they're talking about? Do they understand learning? Are they warm? Is the teacher, tutor, whatever it is, able to talk to you, the parent, and the student at the same time? Student could be in grade 2, but the student, you need to have a conversation with the second grade. Like I always talk to every single one of my students, kindergarten, whatever age they are. I try my best to have a conversation.
Right.
Um, and like see how well they're able to get to know the student and yourself as well. And on top of that is like maybe this is later on and not initially is like are they able to deliver results? And I believe that results in a tutoring center come from one is is the student comfortable in the environment? Like are they in a good learning environment where they're happy, where they're able to be a bit social but also pushed to do better? And two, like are they able to deliver results? Like, is my child actually doing better? Are they enjoying the classes that they're going to? Those are the two biggest things I would say.
Okay, so if people are in Calgary, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you and Cambridge Learning Services?
You can just Google us, give us a call. You either get me or my mom. You can submit a ticket online. We have a bunch. You can reach out to us in any way, shape, or form, and we can get you set up. We have a location in the northeast of Calgary, but we do online tutoring as well and do a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, I would just say just search us up, give us a call. We can talk. Try to figure out how to best help you out with your needs. Yeah.
Before I let you go, I just want to hear maybe from your perspective, just as an entrepreneur. what advice would you give yourself if when you took over the business a couple of years ago, without everything you know now? What advice would you have given your younger self, or how, with everything you've learned, how maybe would you have differed in your approach, or anything like that?
I think if I could rewind like 2 to 4 years, the advice I'd give myself is don't be disheartened by failures. It's probably the biggest piece of advice. I tried a bunch of different things. I was still learning, like, in terms of advertising, instead of expanding, marketing. I tried so many different things, and sometimes things didn't work, and I didn't really stick by them very much. And I got disheartened. I'm like, oh, this business will never grow. Let me just leave it as a cash cow, focus on my career. Um, and I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think to get disheartened is to fail. To fail is to just never try again. To keep
Right.
trying is to succeed, in my opinion. And so I just kept trying, and I even right now, I'm developing a EdTech application. I'm trying different things. I just want to get started, and nobody knows the right answer, but you won't know until you try. So,
Right. That's a great piece of advice. For let's say the younger person, the kids that are still in college who have aspirations to maybe start a tutoring company, what would be some more advice maybe you'd give them for start to like actually starting out, maybe getting their first client?
mhm. For getting your first client, start in the community most closest to you, in the sense that, like, if you're in a university and you're on the, if you're in university, look for other university kids to tutor. If you're, at home, or you live in a suburb like we did, start advertising to kids in your neighborhood. That's what my sister did when she started. Like, my sister's name is Sharon. She started in 2018 advertising using flyers to different like houses in our neighborhood, and she started tutoring kids in our living room, and we got a decent client base from there. And then she signed a lease in 2019 for like a tutoring center, and just took off from there. So I'd say just get started, and start with the community most closest to you, or the easiest accessible.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kartikeya, for coming on, and thank you for telling us more about Cambridge Learning Services. I definitely want to have you on again, and we're going to have a whole another conversation just about EdTech because I know it's a deep passion of yours, and we'll be working on that together. So, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I wish you well.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.